Hello listeners, I'm Casey, host of the Cult Vault podcast, and as you may already know, I've been on hiatus from recording new interviews while I undertake a master's degree in the psychology of coercive control. This course is ending on September the 20th, right before the weekend of CrimeCon UK. CrimeCon UK, the world's leading true crime event, which is partnered with the expert-led documentary and series channel True Crime, is back in London on the 21st and 22nd of September for a weekend of panels, experiences and networking. If you're interested in the discovery, education and advocacy surrounding true crime, then this is the event for you. It's filled to the brim with expert speakers from all areas of true crime, amazing podcasters and content creators, immersive experiences, book signings, and even a chance to hang out with the canine unit of good doggies. This is a weekend that you won't want to miss. I'll be at the event throughout the entire weekend, celebrating the end of my master's and chatting all about cults and coercive control. With more ticket options this year than ever before, there is a package suitable for everyone interested in this event. For more information on how you can be at London's CrimeCon UK in September 2024, visit crimecon.co.uk or follow the link in the episode description. You can use the code CULT, C-U-L-T, at the checkout and get 10% off your tickets. And I really hope to see some of you there. Until then, I'm busy putting my calendar together of new interviews, which I hope to start releasing in October 2024. Thank you so much for listeners old and new for sticking with me during this quiet period. I can't wait to bring you new content in the autumn of this year. You were able to have your first baby in a place that had medical care equipment.
Yes, that was a good thing because I needed an hour's worth of stitches. But see, so I had the initial checkup, and then I think I went to the hospital for birth, and that was pretty much what I did with all 8 of my pregnancies. You have your first checkup, then you go and have the baby. I don't know how it is in the West, but in Asian countries where I've lived, mothers go like every 1 month, every 2 weeks, every week, every couple days, and they get a lot of medical care.
Yeah,
child, but not with me. And then I generally that day at that hospital, I think I stayed 2 days. They told the baby, they said the baby could leave straight away, but I couldn't because they were afraid I was going to hemorrhage or something. So I had to stay for 2 days in that hospital. The next one, I think I went home the very same day I had the baby. And that was pretty much, it was a rare that I could stay in the hospital for a few days after I had a baby. Oh, actually, I didn't go to hospitals always, so I went to midwife sometimes.
There was one case in the book where you were able to actually have a couple of days rest, and I felt so relieved for you when you were able to get some sleep. Oh my goodness, I almost was like taking a breath of relief, but of course you should have been able to have that time each time.
The thing is that I never, I would have been selfish if I had said, or I thought to my own brain, I would have been selfish if I had said, hey, can I have a day to rest here? I just had a baby. Well, I wouldn't dare. I had the thought of ever asking for something for myself. That was something that maybe my husband might have thought of, or somebody that was in leadership might have thought, hey, maybe she should have a rest, But no, I dare not ask something like that for myself, because that would have been selfish. You see, I was raised as a Catholic, right? And I was taught to be a good little girl, to do what I was told, and to always put other people before myself. And so that was such an easy slippage of the children of God. When you're just supposed to live for others. Christians are supposed to live for others. When I was a child, I read books of missionaries' lives. They all just went to Africa. This is just great. In retrospect, to save the darkened heathen of the world. It's so silly. But to me, it was so noble at the time as a child. And so that's what I wanted to do. And so you couldn't give a thought for yourselves. You had to only think of others. Jesus, then others, then you is how you spelt joy, we were taught, You could never think of yourself. So that was my to think of myself after I left the group. It really took a while to actually Like, what do I even want? Do I have a want? Is there a want in my vocabulary? What do I want? I don't know what I want because I'd never thought about it. It was super hard to even get a grasp of it. It was so foreign to me.
And it wasn't
Tangent.
soon after you have your first child. Well, there is actually an incident in the book where you are pregnant with your second child, but that pregnancy doesn't go to full term.
Oh, right. Yes.
And I thought that you kind of brushed over that. And it felt again like one of those situations where maybe in a typical environment, a person may be given a chance to grieve, to come to terms with that situation. And it's almost like in your mind, you're like, okay, that's happened. So now we go back to what we were doing. And it felt again like another one of those moments where you weren't able to take time for yourself to really feel the event that took place.
Oh, yes. I just remember thinking, gosh, I was so sick at that pregnancy, and I didn't even know who the father was, and that was not a good situation. I didn't like that. And so it was like almost a relief that I lost the baby. It's like, oh, phew. I don't have to deal with that, not knowing who the father is, It's like just so strange, Didn't like it.
Eventually, you go on to get married to somebody in the Children of God, so you have an official marriage ceremony. And what does that look like?
Well, we had already been together. Okay, so I met this. Okay, we have to back up a bit. So after I had my first child, and I was really in love with this man that was the dad, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe I can just be a second wife, because lots of people had two wives in the family, in the cult, And so then when the baby's 6 months old, the guy comes back from Europe, and I'm kind of wondering what's going on. And then that was the time when my dad was dying, so I had to wait for him to come back from Europe before I could go to see my dad. See, my dad, my stepmother called me, or maybe it was my brother. They called me like when the baby was a month old, and they said, your dad's really sick. Can you come home and see him? But I had promised my baby's father that I would stay and take care of his wife and children. So we were just two women, in this house in Manila. Well, granted, there were other children of God members in other places that probably could have stepped in, but I had given my promise, my word, that I would take care of this woman. So I just kept like putting off my brother. Oh, the baby's too small. I can't travel, or blah, blah. And finally, I think I told my brother the truth one time. I think I said, I just can't leave until the father comes back, and I don't know when he's coming back, and I can't get in touch with him. So finally, when he came back, then I got, my stepmother sent me tickets, and I got on the plane to fly back to see my dad before he died. And I landed in San Francisco, and my sister met me at the airport, and we're chatting and eating dinner, and she showed me pictures of my dad, and then she said, well, Dad didn't make it. He died yesterday. And they hadn't told me, because they didn't want me to cancel my trip. So I went home and went to my dad's funeral, met my stepmother. And that was pretty sad. But then I went back to Manila to be with this couple again. And then about a year later, they moved away to go work with Moses, and I got moved into this commune with lots of people that were still practicing free sex. And I was like, oh, man, what a lack of control. I went from having complete control in my little world to zero control. And it was very traumatic. And plus, I was like traumatized because the people that I loved, the children that I loved, were gone. My family had just been torn away from me, I felt. These people I'd been with for over 4 years. And there I was in this like whirlwind commune with all these people and having sex, and people having sex right in front of my eyes, and it's like, please get a room, But it was really traumatic. And so
there was no room for these people to get a room either, by the sound of things.
Exactly. That's right. So we shared a room with this very ardent couple. But then when New Year's came around, I was like, oh, my poor son, he really needs a father. So I prayed for God to supply my son with a father, not for anything for myself. God forbid I should pray for a husband for me. I did just pray for a father for my son. And so then not long thereafter, I met this man that seemed so gentle and kind and sweet. And everybody told me he was the most wonderful man ever. And I'm like, why isn't he married already then? Because everybody else was married, and very rare to meet a single man. So, whoa, well, maybe God saved him from me. So within 6 weeks, we were together. And then maybe a year and a half later, a couple of years later, a few years later, we actually had our wedding. And I'm like, already after 2 months of being together, it was as if my husband never wanted to touch me again. Like, he would push me away if I tried to hug him. And I was like, wow, am I that ugly? I was a really insecure teenager, right? Anorexic. And also, it's like, oh, it must just be because I'm so ugly and undesirable. It's all my fault. And so he's always pushing me away. And so it's like, but I promised I would stay true to him till death do we part, So leaving him would never happen.
And he's also obligated to go and be with other women in the commune?
Well, we were in that, by the time I was together with him, we were back in the same house where I'd lived with the gentle couple, the quiet couple, with the leaders of the country. And it was just me and them and my husband. And sometimes there was another person helping with the kids there. But it was just mainly us and them. So just 2 couples.
Right.
And so, no, he wasn't having to go and have sex with anybody at that time, nor was I. We were kind of protected. Although I did do some FFing because I had a regular man that I was with. And so I would see him like a lot.
And is there a point where you go and move out of that environment and then he is expected to go with other women?
Oh, yes. So, yes, nothing lasts long in the children of God. So, yes, that little quiet house didn't last for long. We moved to another relatively quiet house, but in that next house, there were a lot more women. There were single women that my husband had to go and, quote unquote, take care of every week. So he was scheduled. So there was this sharing schedule. They call it sharing is the euphemism for sex. So a sex schedule, and it was on the refrigerator, right? There's a dishwashing schedule, the cooking schedule, and the sex schedule. So I every time I walked into that kitchen, I would avert my eyes because I just couldn't bear to see it. All the times he was scheduled to go have sex with these other women, because he never wanted to touch me. And so I just thought, oh, I'm just so undesirable. But he'll just go and, like, when he has to have sex with some other girl, he'll just go and have sex with them. Like, well, why? Why will he do that with them and not with me? What is wrong with me? Why doesn't he love me? And so, like, my insecurities were like out of proportion, huge. And I was very unhappy. And then it continued like that. We left that house to another one, and it just continued on until finally I was just like, I'm just so sick of this jealousy and my insecurities. I just can't stand it anymore. I think I'll just give up. And so I kind of just gave in and just gave up. And I think that's what the leaders would have called yielding myself to the Lord, when you just give in.
In Nicola Ranson's book, Slice of Orange, where she talked about following Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, and she spoke about having somebody that she loved so much, and because they practiced free love within Rajneesh Puram, and people would come up to her and say, or in the ashram in India, they would come up to her and say, wow, your husband's really good in bed. And she'd be like, oh my goodness, well, I know that because he's my husband, but he was out having relations with other people. And we had a lengthy discussion around whether we thought monogamy was natural or whether it was a condition of Western upbringing, society, because there are some communities in the world that do have polyamorous setups within their communities, and these have been traditions and practices that have been passed down for hundreds of years. In other parts of the world that are perhaps less accessible to us than what we are used to in the Western world. So we had a big discussion around whether I thought or whether she thought that that was her intrinsically finding it difficult to share her husband, or whether it was a condition of her upbringing in different parts of the world, or whether it was natural for her to feel jealous in general of her husband being with multiple partners. And I don't know if you have any thoughts or feelings around what your jealousy may have said about you or your upbringing or monogamy and polyamory as a subject.
I guess I didn't really think about that before, but yeah. Well, I was brought up really, puritanically, and so I would be all for monogamy. But since I've been in Asia, like historically, China, Japan, these people for generations, the men have had mistresses. It's just like a normal thing. Nobody's going to raise their eyebrows about it. And the men had sex with young boys is like just super commonly. It was not a strange thing at all. And so the ideas of in Asia towards sex were pretty loose, pretty liberal compared to us with our Judeo-Christian backgrounds. It wasn't until the Westerners came in that the ideas towards sex changed. So I don't know. That's a hard call. Look at India. I don't really know. I think it's all a cultural thing.
It would be really interesting to ask somebody from one of these communities from hundreds of years ago whether they were jealous of their, or even if they had significant others, or partners or one-on-one marriage ceremonies. It'd be interesting to ask, though, if those levels of jealousy still existed or if they exist in the communities where polyamory is.
Well, I was reading a book called Wild Swans. It's written by I can't remember her name, but it's there. Wild Swans. It's about 3 generations of women in China, and so the grandmother was of the generation that had bound feet. So that's how far back we're going. And so she was married off to a warlord when she was young, but she was one of his many wives. She was just a concubine. So it was like it was a given that the guy's going to have lots of women. And then, I read a lot of books. I read another book. I read Historical China. When the men were it was having more than one woman was just the normal. The women just accepted it because that was just what it was. And men like to do that. So that's what they do. I'm not really sure how possessive they felt and that sense of jealousy that we Western women might feel over our man who we want to be our man. I'm not so sure they felt like that. Plus, a lot of their marriages were arranged where they were sold off to be wives. So I think the whole construct was different.
Everything that you've just said there makes me feel so tense and almost angry. And the fact that we just say, so women were just kind of like sold off or arranged marriages. She was just given to a warlord. And we just say it like that because that's what it was like. It was just
that's what it was like.
Oh my goodness!
We're longings of men. That's just the way it was. It's like history.
Stop.
We've come a long way. We've come a long way.
Oh, we haven't come far enough though. At the same time, so. At some point, you and your husband and your children move into a house with many, many people.
Uh-huh.
And this, it feels like a time that starts like spiraling almost. This is where it feels like things become really chaotic for you.
Uh-huh.
There's so much responsibility. There's so many children. There's so much going on. There's no space for anybody to live. Talk us through what that experience was like when you first moved into that home.
Now in Manila, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, it didn't really have any choice. It was like, okay, now there's this new, the combo vision, some later came out. So we all have to live together in these enormous homes. So somebody rented this enormous house, and I don't even know how many people were there. There were lots of couples, and lots of couples came from World Services, which would mean the wives came with their children and the husbands stayed because the husbands had important work for the Lord to do there. And they generally got new, younger wives from the second generation. And so the wives, the mothers and their children came with maybe some guy sent to, quote unquote, take care of them. So these families were broken up. All these kids were there, and they all needed school. But no, they have to. School is not something we do now. We teach them how to witness, and we teach them to sing and dance so they can go and busk on the streets or go sing in old folks' homes or whatever. So a lot of their time was spent singing practice, and then we had to go office to office or door to door selling cassette tapes and posters to get money. So we'd from morning to night, we'd be doing that. And it was so awful to me because I always wanted the kids to they have school time, and of course we couldn't send them to public school because, that's the territory of the devil or whatever. You had to teach them yourselves, but then we weren't allowed to teach them ourselves, but we still had to teach them, but we weren't allowed to because we needed to go out and raise money. Oh, and meanwhile, then there was sharing schedules were still happening, and we had to go out at flirty fishing sometimes, because we needed to get money that way too. I mean, you have a lot of people together, and it costs money to live, So it was pretty awful. Yes, that was pretty awful. And then from that place we moved. Oh, and then, the most awful thing of that was that everybody got measles. And measles is not an easy sickness. Especially the variety that we had in the Philippines, some tropical measles, it was bad. Well, the younger children were all in this kind of downstairs room that had, it was a mansion we lived at. We had to rent a mansion because where else would we have enough bedrooms and space? It was still crowded. But this giant downstairs room was where they put lots and lots of bunk beds. And so my husband stayed there for 2 months inside that room with these sick children, taking care of them. And then the teenagers that had it were in a upstairs room with another gentleman that took care of them. And oh my goodness, the younger children, they just kind of slept and drank their juice or whatever. They were, and the curtains were kept shut. The shears were shut so it wouldn't be too bright because their eyes were photophobic. Measles is like that. But so these younger children, they were just kind of sleeping and taking it easy. They weren't so bad off, it didn't look like. But the teenagers, oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever seen such sick people in my life. They had measles inside and out, and just they were just miserable. Oh, it was so sad.
What medical intervention could have happened if... I don't know how measles work. I don't know if there was some type of medication that could have been accessed to help overcome the outbreak.
Well, I think they put calamine lotion or something on their bumps, but I don't really know, honestly, if there is a medication for measles. But I mean, there's a vaccine for measles, so that's the way to solve the measles problem, is just get vaccinated. But anyway, the kids went through it. Thankfully, nobody died, and nobody needed to go to the hospital for any transfusions or anything. So everybody pulled through. But boy, those kids were sick for about 2 weeks, I think. And then we made sure that they took it easy and recovered, because we didn't want them to get sick again. Take it easy, kids. So we kept a good watch on them for another month to make sure that they didn't get another sickness, and made sure they had decent food. But of course, can you imagine the financial chaos that threw us into, with all these people having to take care of these sick kids? And anyway, so that was pretty horrific. And then after that, we moved I don't know, every 6
all the time.
Yeah, we moved a lot. I just can't even keep all the places, keep track of all the places I lived. But we moved into this big mansion in Manila. I mean, bigger than that. This one had 35 toilets. I'll never forget that. And it was this huge house, and we lived there for just a little while until the woman kids I was taking care of, her name was printed on the front of the newspaper as one of the leaders of the Children of God, and the National Bureau of Investigation was investigating the Children of God there. And so Berg said she needs to leave the country right away. Her husband was gone. She was sick, pregnant, and she had 5 kids. And so my husband and I had been taking care of her kids for like 5 years already. And so we went with her to Tokyo. And that is how I moved to Japan to help this woman move to Tokyo, who it was natural that I would help her. I've been taking care of her kids for 5 years. Who else was going to go with her? So, yeah.
And at this point, has the word from Berg about free love filtered through, where it's kind of he's given permission for people to start having sexual relations with children? Has that happened at this point?
Oh, well, let's see. So like, why don't you? Isn't that like going to be on the top of your mind, Mary? Well, I was just so busy.
No, but again, I think that's why your book is so important, because it really is an insight into why that isn't at the top of your mind. It really, I can't explain it in the way that I want to, but that's why people just have to go and read it to understand. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, by the FFing kind of, like it's 1987 or 1986, around then, AIDS started. And so then Berg said, okay, no more FFing. Only people that you have been FFing all along, like only long-term friends. Well, long-term fish can still be FF'd, or flirty fished. The rest of you can't go out with strangers anymore because it's too dangerous. You might get AIDS and die, right? And spread it to everybody. So that was the end of that. And the interhome share in sex kind of, you couldn't have sex with people that weren't in your own commune anymore. He made all these rules, and because of the AIDS thing, I think. I mean, I could be wrong on why he did that. I can't really remember. And then, somewhere around in the early 80s, there was a big commune in Greece called Music with Meaning. And this place was like Berg's ideal commune or practice commune, where he had I guess he closely oversaw them, and they started to film adult women dancing with these shawls, like little scarves that were see-through, and then the little girls dancing with them. And at the time, I just thought, oh, their little girls are copying their moms, how cute. I didn't think of it as grooming at all. I just thought, oh, the little girls are dancing. Fine, It's how naive, But, so from that, the Davidito book came out too. And in the Davidito book, that's a book that Berg's, a woman that lived with Berg, who took care of Berg and his wife's baby, Davidito. There was like how to take care of a kid childcare book, and it was like, it showed pictures of her having quote unquote love up time with him, and he'd be naked on the bed, and she'd talk about like masturbating him and stuff. And frankly, that just kind of went over my head, and I was like, yeah, okay, fine, that's not going to happen. It's like, who would do that? Nobody I know would do that. But that's what was happening in the book. But why didn't I go like, what? That's horrible. Why is she doing that to him? She shouldn't be doing that. That thought didn't go in my head. Why not? I don't know. But it didn't. I just thought, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to, okay, what does she say? She talked about in that book how you should teach the children like from the Moe letter. So what you do is her teaching plan was thus. You take a Moe letter and you read it to the children, and then maybe you give them some fill in the blanks for their language arts, and then maybe you try to figure out how to make a math lesson out of this Moe letter. And I'm like, yeah, no. If I'm going to do that at all, I'd rather use the Bible verses or something, but yeah, I just feel it's such a stupid way to teach children. Anyway, even at the time I thought that. So I was more focused on teaching the children than masturbating a little kid, which I was never going to do. So I didn't condemn her because she was above me. She's like the holy prophet, she's in the holy prophet's house. So whatever, but I'm in my house and I want to make sure my kids learn to read and this and that. And that's my job. So I guess I had compartmentalized it again, just had to disconnect from it. And so I didn't see people having sex with kids, but clearly it happened, which is what I read those things after I read the internet forums from these second generation people after I left, and I heard these stories, and of course I was just horrified. I was like, oh my God, why didn't I see it? Why didn't I know that was going to happen? I thought, oh, the people and the children of God are good people. They're all good people. Nobody would abuse a child. Just like I thought about that leader.
Even then, when that archbishop, is it?
Yeah.
When even then, when you have those thoughts about him, he's still fired. So then you're like, of course they've got rid of him. They don't want bad people. They know he's a bad person. So all of these things happen in your journey that confirm your thoughts of that you had all along. He's a bad person. Oh, he's fired. Yay, they saw him for what he was. I knew this place was a good place. Yeah, so it's hard because even when you have those difficult thoughts, there are events that happen that stop you from exploring what those thoughts might mean. And you never saw any of this happening around you. So why would you ever think that it was happening anywhere else?
Yeah.
And that's, again, why the book is so important for people who want to understand how and why it happened with the adults' knowledge or without the adults' knowledge in these different Children of God homes. At some point, you arrive in Japan. And what are your first impressions of Tokyo? What is that like in terms of changing from the Philippines and everything that you've known for the last few years?
Okay, well, in the Philippines, Filipinos are smiling, friendly, happy, wore colorful clothing, love to dance and sing. So I get off the plane and walk into Tokyo, and there's bustling men in black suits bustling everywhere. There are black and white cars. I'm instantly illiterate. I can read nothing at all. I can understand nothing at all. There's nothing familiar about it. Everybody's somber, rushing here and there, busy, busy, busy. And there is not one happy, smiling face, not one colorful vehicle, not one bit of colored clothing. It was just all very bland and conservative. And then the men would be walking seriously along the street, and their wives would be behind them carrying the baggage, until the wives would rush forward to open the doors for the men so the men could go through. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on with this country? It's like how rude the men are, I think. Well, they didn't know. There are different cultures in this world. But boy, it was a shock. And what the hardest thing was the language. I just couldn't understand anything, and I hated not being able to read. It was just such a frustration.
It's funny because you're actually talking to me from Japan now, so it must have made some kind of impression on you at some point.
Isn't it ironic, I never would have imagined that I'd live in Japan for most of my life. Here I am.
So when you arrive and you have this kind of change, this shock in culture and your ability to navigate your way around, and again taking away even more possibility of you regaining some level of independence, even further taking that away.
Oh, that's true.
Where do you go to live at that point?
Okay, well, first we went to live in this enormous countryside house owned by a queen. This are air quotes here for the queen. She's a woman that was friends with the children of God, I guess. I don't know how deep that friendship went, but she had this land that a big building that she had been using to take care of disadvantaged or troubled teenagers, I guess. But all the troubled teenagers left, and the children of God moved in, and that's where I went and stayed there for 2 months, and then we moved to a house in Tokyo, and it was an old house with this kind of sandpapery stuff on the walls that catches all the dust. And I had an allergic reaction to it, and I was pregnant. And so I was kind of sick from that house and the dust and the whole situation. And it was really, really hot. I had lived in Manila for a long time, but the summer in Tokyo was so hot and humid. And my poor little girl was just covered in heat rash. And I was like, we didn't have any money, and we were eating like donated food that was out of date food that like these store owners would donate. Donate is really not the right word, but people like a Japanese person and a foreigner, you would go around to these stores, little mom and pop shops, and if you have any leftover food at the end of the day, can you donate it to us? We're missionaries, blah blah. And people would give them food. Well, I imagine they'd give them the outdated food because you have to pay to throw away stuff in Japan. So it was like easy out for them. So they'd give us this outdated food, and that's what we'd live off of. And I was pregnant and sick, and the kids had to go out postering, and like they'd say like one line in Japanese, and God help us if somebody asks us a question because we can't understand anything. All we can say is, can you give us a donation and thank you? It was awful. And then we needed to go to Manila to renew our visas. We didn't have any money. But yeah, so that was kind of hard. And then at that point in time, I remember thinking, this is such an awful situation. Oh, and at that time, my husband beat my son with a wire hanger, and I was just horrified. And I like, what could a 5-year-old boy have done to deserve that? Nothing. That's like, but he was such a sweet and gentle man. My mind would tell myself, and I would be like, but there was no escape. Like, we had no money. I had no family. I had no friends. I could not speak Japanese. What was I going to do? So then I had to tell myself, okay, well, you're not being burned at the stake. Okay, things could be worse. Well, at least you're still alive. At least you're healthy. At least, things will get better. Things will get better. Oh, but that was a pretty low point. And then we moved into this enormous house. Well, actually, I wish it was enormous. It was an apartment, and we put, maybe 70 children in there, and some adults. And we took, there was this plan that some leader had that the 3 homes in Tokyo would work together. So there'd be one home that did witnessing, and one home that did what we called provisioning, which means asking businesses for food and items that we needed. Like, they would get the stuff we needed, and this other home would witness to people. And then ours was a home where we would teach the children. It was a school home. So that was like a new plan that came out. So I was in the school home, And they just kept bringing in more and more kids. And I was like, wow, aren't we full up already? And then we moved into the basement of the building, and where one of the leaders set up these plywood between these donated hotel chairs that just, so the chairs would be back to back and the plywood would be between them. And that was how the rooms. That's how places were separated, like into rooms in this like shantytown basement. And there was windows along the side. And so people from the apartment building could go down and look in the big sliding windows like on the side. The whole side was windows, right? So people could go down this staircase and look and see this shantytown with all these weird foreigners in their basement. It was like insanity. And I was pregnant, and wasn't I always? And I lived down in that little basement there by myself. I think my husband was taking care of a group of toddlers with 2 other women, and he would sleep with the toddlers in their room to take care of the children because their mothers were in the home where all the witnesses were, also where the provisioners were. So we had all these children. We even had a 2-month-old baby there without her mother. It was like, oh no. I was like, why? This poor baby. And then, as if things couldn't have been any worse, we got whooping cough. Everybody had whooping cough. And at the time, that was right after my baby was born. So I had moved to an apartment upstairs where I was like a secretary to this leader and taking care of my newborn and helping this guy, doing the work for that guy while he went out and went to a gym or something. I don't know. He was never around. And then while I was out one day, I was expressing my milk for this 2-month-old baby that was sick because, like, this poor baby, they were giving her, bottled milk that she was just throwing up all the time. And so I was expressing my breast milk for her and putting it in a baby bottle in the fridge. And then one time I was out, I don't know where I was. Maybe I went to a doctor appointment, maybe. I don't remember. But I came back and somebody had fed my own baby with that baby bottle from the sick baby. So my daughter got exposed to whooping cough from the sick baby's bottle. So, so I moved back downstairs because she was already exposed. And then, oh man, I just could not believe how bad it was when I walked in. There's like, it was like like some sort of house of horrors, There was just kids coughing everywhere. There was a woman in the dining room. Like you walk in and there's this big room that's kind of like the living room, dining room. We had tables set up because we had so many people. So it was like all dining room. This woman was like, had this child across her lap, and there was a basin, and she was patting the child's back so the kid could throw up all this mucus and vomit into this basin. And she was like patting him and trying to take care of him. And these kids were in these bunk beds, three level high bunk beds, and they were all sick and with buckets to vomit into. And it was pretty horrible. Yeah, but yeah, it was pretty bad. But thankfully it passed. No one died. I think the 2-month-old baby did end up going to the hospital for a little while. Why didn't her mother go there and take care of her? This is a question we won't know the answer to. But I found out last year. I talked to somebody that knew that girl and she told me that she is a healthy, happy adult woman now. So I'm happy to hear that. She survived. So I was really worried about her. And but she had a very kind woman that took care of her, a German woman, just slept with her in her arms every night, just held her always. She was such a nice German woman. She had just joined the cult in India and moved over, and then she was given this baby to take care of, and she was so diligent with the baby. Very kind to her.
That makes me where was the mom? Because that's all babies need, isn't it? They just need that. They just want that comfort. And it makes me sad to think that she was so small and she didn't have that.
Oh, she had that German lady taking care of her, so that German lady did not put her down. She held it the whole time. Yeah. Well, I mean, there were nice people in the cult, people that were very dedicated and that worked really, really hard, They were just in a bad situation, But we tried really hard to make things fun for all the kids, and, it was hard.
Yeah. And it comes through in the book as well that the education of the children is so, so important to you. And that is one of the only times that you butt heads with people in leadership is when they are, they're telling you that education needs to go on the back foot because other things need to happen. Like what I would maybe call the child labor is the priority over the education of the children. Or they would say, that they don't like the way that you're educating the children because you're not using the Mo letters, you're using the Bible. And that was the only time that you would say, no, I disagree. I think this is the way it should be done. Or eventually that would be the thing that would be the catalyst for you, distancing yourself and moving yourself away from the group, was your love for educating the children, which is the one of the threads of the book that kind of, I think, keeps you from losing your mind completely. There are times where you say that you reflect now and realize that you were having like a breakdown of some sort. Occasionally there are points where you kind of realize that you've just shut down completely. But it's always the teaching of the kids that brings you back, and the children. So, in some ways, those children had you as well as that baby having that German lady. Well, I feel like if you weren't fighting for those children to have some type of education, then it may have just been, and maybe even was in other places, just disregarded altogether.
Oh,
and you spoke in the book of one point where you are like shamed publicly in front of the home that you live in for something that you did. And I just wondered if you could talk everybody kind of through that particular event, which is another common tactic used within these high control groups that we discuss.
Okay, well, this happened after. Okay, I was in the hospital or clinic at this time, actually, with my fifth baby. Fifth baby was born, and I stayed for like 4 days, I think, that time. Maybe 5. I think it was 5 days. It was only 4. Anyway, 4 days. And so I was really, happy. I had this really sweet little baby boy, and I was going to go home and introduce him to his brothers and sisters, and how nice, new babies, oxytocin, lovey, happy.
Mm-hmm. And so I love those parts in the book where you say, I just stared into my newborn's face, because isn't that one of the most incredible moments in life? Yes. Is having that first, and so I felt those moments when you had them.
Sweet. And so anyway, but then somebody said, is this district shepherd woman has written you a letter? Okay, that's not good. That does not bode well for me. And this were the days, I believe, before your time, but when you had a computer printout, there was like this one long sheet of paper that you'd run through, and there'd be little holes on the side that read through the runners, So it's like this super long sheet of paper. So when I got home, I was in my room, which was like this walled off piece, section, like this how homemade wall kind of divider between my room and where the children that I took care of slept. These young, like 11, 12-year-olds that I took care of. So we kind of shared the room, but we had a little wall there. Anyway, so I was in this room, and I was like, my kids were going to come in and meet their new little brother. And then somebody hands me this big 8-page computer printout, and it's this long correction for, I don't remember. I remember she said I was aloof, and I was self-righteous, and I favored my children because those were like always what I always got corrected for. And lots of other things I did wrong in great detail, all my sins and crimes against the cult or whatever, and on and on. And so and then I was supposed to read some more letters as my, to reform myself, or was it my penance? Who knows? And then I was supposed to have united prayer and do a big confession, ask for prayer and have people pray for me. So the day that, it was my birthday too. the day that should have been a big joyful day with me bringing my baby home and my birthday. I forgot it was my birthday. Oh, lovely. Then I get this huge correction, and I'm just under this terrible cloud, and I couldn't sleep at night, feeling like such a complete failure. And I'd failed the Lord, even though I tried my hardest to be a good disciple and to serve the Lord and to not think of myself and think of others, and tried my very best, but it wasn't good enough because look at what a failure I am. And so then when the time came, there was this evening meeting called with all the adults, like, I don't know, 50 people or so. There were a lot of people there. Maybe 40, 50 people. I can't remember. And then they all put their hands on me and prayed for me and spoke in tongues. And first I had to do a confession, what all my sins were, but I can't remember what they were. And then they all prayed for me. And then people gave prophecies, which means they say whatever comes in their head, assuming it's God speaking to them, And then, well, yeah, that was that. Then I was supposed to read all these more letters for my study to keep reforming myself. But from that moment on, I think that one kind of eviscerated any last vestiges of myself or any self-confidence I might have had. Any strength I might have had was pretty much gone after that one. I felt like I was just a shell, just kind of going through the motions of, I was just a shell after that. And just it really stuck out to me when we moved to the next commune, and I met a boy that I had known in Tokyo, and he was like a really nice kid, super nice kid, still friends with the guy today. And he saw me, and he's like, "Oh, hi, Mary." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, hi, how's it going?" And then he says to his friend that he's with, this teenager, maybe 14 years old, he says, "Oh, watch out for Mary. She means what she says." And I'm like, "Yeah, not this Mary." No, maybe I did before, but yeah, I don't think I do anymore. I'm not the same person anymore. Because I just wasn't. I was just broken after that.
Maybe they could sense that you were starting to push back against some things and realize that you needed some kind of radicalizing to kind of get you back into that submissive mindset.
I tell you, they got me back into that submissive mindset, that's for sure.
And in 1975, the leadership of the Children of God changes hands?
1995.
Oh, is that 95? Sorry, I've made a mistake there.
It's just a typo.
So, in 1995, the leadership of the Children of God changes hands.
Mm-hmm.
And does that change the church significantly, or does it kind of continue as it was?
I think it changed it significantly, because they published a book called the Love Charter, which was new rules for what it meant to be a member. And until that point, people had to live in these enormous communes with like 4 or 5 couples at least, which with everybody having 8 and 10 children. So it's a lot of kids. And then at that point, with the Love Charter, people could just live in 2 family homes. And I think, well, that was the biggest change in my opinion, was that people could live in smaller homes. So at that point, another significant thing happened in our lives is that some visitors came to our house for like a little party that we had, like a little event we did with the neighbors. And this one man was talking, and I was in with this, talking to the men, like the neighbor men, while the women were out cleaning. I don't know how I managed to get in the room with all the men, but there I was sitting on the floor, and they were all, of course, speaking Japanese. And I'm like, keep nudging this foreigner beside me. Hey, what are they saying? Can you translate for me? What are they saying? And I kept asking that, which must have been really annoying. But one of the old visitors said, well, how can you call yourself a missionary when you can't even speak Japanese? And I'm like, yeah, I've been thinking that same thing myself, So like, yes, confirmation. How can I call myself a missionary when I can't speak Japanese? If it's exactly right. So my husband felt the same way. And so we decided we were going to move away from other cult members and live on our own so we could experience the culture of Japan and learn the language. And we both hated selling these posters and tapes and videos and CDs, I think we had by then. We hated doing that, Hi, here, can you take this? Can you give us a donation? It's basically begging on the streets. It was like so humiliating. I didn't like that. So he didn't either. So we decided, okay, we're going to move far away from everybody and he's going to get a job. Okay. So we decided that. So I went to Zerby, Berg's wife, who's now the leader of the cult since Berg died. And I say, hey, and I think she had heard of me through the leader I had taken care of the kids for 6 years. She knew I existed. So I wrote to her and said, can we have permission to live only with our own family and not have to live with another couple? And she said, okay, for like a year or two, you can have this waiver. Okay, cool. So we moved to this faraway city thinking that, yay, this is going to be great. We are going to be able to experience Japan. It's going to be wonderful. And we just robbed our kids of any socialization they ever would have had because my kids couldn't speak Japanese either. So here we are in this place where no one speaks English. There's no other foreigners. And our poor kids, I'm trying to homeschool them. And it's like, what? How are they going to play with? Well, they can play with each other, but this is not the best situation. So then we're like, oh, we have to send them to school so they can learn Japanese and have some friends. And then the schools were so regimented and my mind was still like an American. And I'm like, oh, I can't bear it. They're so harsh. Like my daughter would be outside in these little PE. Do you call it PE in English?
Yeah.
PE clothes with like little underwear and a little T-shirt, and it's snowing, and the teachers are wrapped up in scarves and coats and everything, and the little girls are out there shivering, and their legs are purple, but that's the way they tough up things. This was a cultural shift for me that I wasn't ready for, and I'm like, yeah, I can't handle it. My mother's heart is breaking. I got to take my kids home so I can teach them myself. So I took them out of school again, and then it was just kind of a mess. And then meanwhile, our marriage situation was just getting worse, and my husband was just being more harsh on our kids, and because he was feeling pressure from his job, and he'd just come home and be angry and beat the children for any little thing that tipped him off, and it was just getting really, really rough. And then we were thinking, we have to live with other people, so we'd be inviting people down to live with us, and it was really hard to live with other people. And so that was another stress of trying to follow all the rules and trying to make sure we passed out our literature, and nobody liked doing it. Certainly not my husband. I didn't like it either, but I felt it was our duty, We didn't want to be in eternal shame for failing God. So that was kind of what happened when we moved away. But my eyes slowly became opened as Zerby, the new woman in charge of the cult, Berg's wife, Zerby, her name is, she started putting out these new publications that were so bizarre. The first one was, you have to pretend you're having sex with Jesus when you have sex, or you're masturbating. It's like, but this is not a required belief. You can believe it if we believe it, but you can choose it. You choose to believe it if you want to. You don't have to. We're like, great, we're not going to believe that one. Okay, then she comes out with this one. There's these spirit helpers for every situation you can imagine, and they battle against these demons for every situation you can imagine. So it's like, I don't know where she came up with these ideas, but okay, the closest I could think of that was the Catholic saints. But then what's with all the demons? And then, wait, these angels fighting against these devils. And by the way, if you can memorize all their names and call on them specifically, you have more power. Oh, but then there was another one. Because we were such special people, the children of God, the called out ones, the elite army, end-time army of the Lord, we were given a special privilege called the keys of the kingdom. Now, I don't know if you know your Bible verses, but Jesus said, I will give unto thee the keys of the kingdom. And whatsoever thou shalt bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. So the keys of the kingdom apparently were some powerful, mighty force. So Zerby told us, no, don't pray like Christians of old, and we used to in the children of God pray in Jesus' name. I ask this in Jesus' name. That's how you end your prayer. She'd say, don't say in Jesus' name, say in the keys. We pray in the keys or something like that, in the name of the keys or something, in the keys of the kingdom. Anyway, it was really crazy. So all these crazy doctrines were coming. But to me, I think the icing on the cake came when they started publishing these novels that were apparently channeled, through their channels from authors of the past, like Robert Louis Stevenson or something, and then dictated through one of their channels in Zerby's home, this beautiful novel that he didn't have time to write on earth, and they were just horrible. I was one of the few people in the group, I think, there must have been others, but I had a big trunk of English books that I brought with me everywhere I went. And I'd have like a lending library so kids could read books, right? And so I had books in my house, and my kids, I would let them read books, I did get corrected for that once, but it was like when they read Harry Potter, somebody thought that was really bad. But I mean, good Lord, how could I let them read Harry Potter? Anyway.
It's always Harry Potter as well. It's always like, it doesn't matter which religious movement you're looking at, it's always Harry Potter.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling. Anyway, so with these novels, they were so bad. God, if that's the best that heaven can do, something's wrong. So, and then Zerby, after they lost the court, or I guess they won the court case, but that big court case in England caused a lot of press, and the internet was up. And so people that had left the group, some people had put photos of Zerby up online. And so I think she tried to counteract that by making a video of herself talking. So so she had this video that she had recorded, and it was sent out to only a few places. So it could be really valuable, if it's only a few places, you only a few copies, scarcity makes it more valuable. So we had to drive far away to go to another commune to watch this milestone video. And it was so eye-opening, man. Zerby has this like long, straight, hippie age, gray hair. And she's way older than me. She's got to be like she must have been in her 60s or something. I don't know. But way too old to be dressed like this. Oh, in my conservative opinion. She was wearing a dress that was cut down past her breasts, and a big necklace down between her breasts, and all these big, long, hippie earrings. And she was rocking back and forth the whole time she talked. And she was just like, her monologue just went on and on about how the enemies are going to attack us, and we need to fortify the borders of our camps and set up our tents really strong against the enemy. And I was like, this woman is crazy. So my son had already left. My oldest son had already left the group, and he was living in Tokyo working. So I write to him and said, wow, we saw these videos of her. She looks crazy. She's a crazy person. He says, yes, mom. Yes, mom. She is a crazy person. You're right. Read this. And then he sent me a link to Lord Justice Ward's statement. And I'm like, oh, my God. And then I got onto the Moving On website, which was with a forum that used to be around for young people. But it's gone now. But it was a good place for young people to tell all their horror stories. And so I was reading them, and I'm like, okay, I'm out of this. We're out of this. This is the end of us and the children of God now. But then my husband was like, but I haven't read it yet. We can just send in our report one more time and send in our tithes. It won't hurt anything, will it? And what did I say? No way, man. We're not giving another cent to that. No, I said, all right, honey, we can do that. Like a good submissive Bible woman.
But it's starting to spell the end of your time in the Children of God.
As soon as he read that, we were out. That was it. I think it was a mistake making those videos. I don't know if I was the only one that thought she was crazy, but she looked pretty great.
The statement that you mentioned as well had a profound effect on the Children of God movement altogether.
The book? Is that what you mean?
The court case?
Oh, well, I don't think anybody in the group read it. I don't think I mean, unless they went online and read it themselves, and if anybody read it, I don't see how it could not have an effect on them. But it had already been out, but I hadn't even heard of it or read it. All I knew about that court case was what I had learned, probably about 10 years before this time when I left, was when there was a court case, and it's a big attack of the enemies, and it's persecution, and our enemies are lying about us and how great we are. It was framed like that, like it was persecution against us, not like a legit court case where someone was concerned about a child's welfare.
I feel like it might have been the first time that the events taking place within the movement were put in a public space, though, for people to be able to know what is actually happening within some of these communal buildings around the world.
Oh, you mean the judgment of the Lord Justice Ward?
Yeah, just like the first time for people to be kind of people like me, just kind of going about life outside of a movement like this, to be like, wow, that's what the children are going to doing. Kind of a first insight into us seeing what's happening, what's been happening.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking for me to read that, because it wasn't like, it just wasn't my experience, right? So I didn't see it like that, right? Because I was inside the group. But when it was looking at the group from an outside perspective for the first time in my life. And that's what did it. It was like, what? And then, of course, as I said already, the guilt came. Like, how could I waste my life like this and put my children through this?
And so how do you and your husband then take that journey finally out of the group, and what does life look like for you, kind of transitioning into some kind of typical everyday life?
It was the hardest time of my life. I mean, the cult wasn't a picnic, but we had our fun times and our bad times in the cult. There were fun times. It wasn't all bad. But at this, I was like, I was feeling full of guilt, really bad. I'd wasted my life. I had not raised my children in a good way. I mean, I'm a mother, and of course I want the best for my children, right? And I come to find out I did it all wrong. Really felt bad. And so I was like, well, how can we get our kids into college? Here we are in the boonies of Japan. Like, how are we going to get our kids into college in the States? But so then I was contacted by one of the kids who I had taken care of before, and she was living in America. And she said, I have a 7-bedroom house and I've got plenty of room. Can you come live with me? And the schools in this state will, if your kids go through high school here and they do well, then the state provides for their college for free. Just come on, woo, and I have plenty of room. It's fine. And so I was like, well, I dare not ask my brothers if I can live with them. How dare I? I can't do that. I can't ask somebody, right? I was in no position to think I could do that, and not the mental space to like, hey, come on, family, you're my family. I need some help. I couldn't do that. It never would have occurred to me. I don't know. I think it would have been imposing. It just would have been selfish, It wasn't where my head was at. So anyway, this girl's all enthusiastic. I should come live with her. So, okay. So I and two of my teenagers, high school age, moved over there and left my husband running. We had an English school at that time. I left him running the school and with the younger children, which was very, very hard to do, to leave my younger children. Oof, super hard. But anyway, I felt that's what I had to do to get those kids into high school. So, and I had written to the principal of the high school before I left. I exchanged emails with him and said, okay, so I homeschooled these kids and we're moving over from Japan. And the reason we're moving is to go to your high school. So can my kids go to your high school? Oh, yeah, sure. Come on over. So we went all over. My son was first year, so he got in. My daughter was supposed to go into her senior year. Now, my daughter was very studious. She's very, very smart and self-studies. Like she doesn't need to be, she's self-motivated. So like she does great. She would have been fine. But they said, oh no, she's been homeschooled. She's not in it wasn't like a registered, what do you call it? Like a registered, accredited homeschooling system. I just schooled her myself. And so they're like, oh, she has to go downtown to this really dangerous section of town and take pass-fail tests on every single subject she ever did in high school. And then if she passes them all, even if she passes them all, she won't be eligible for the scholarships to college because you have to have good grades. You can't just have pass-fails. And I'm like, but why didn't you tell me this before I moved away from Japan? I'm thinking that in my head, but of course I'm not going to say that to an authority figure. So I'm like, today, if it were me, I would go to that principal. I'd say, hey, you said my kids could go to this school now. Let's see it. Uh-huh. Okay, we came across the world, all the way across the world to do this. And you're saying no now? What are you talking about? I would have fought. But in that time, I was like, oh, okay, I guess she'll have to go to community college then. It was just a complete disaster. That time in America was a complete disaster. Everything went wrong. Well, the one son had a great time going to school. Another son came over and went to school, and he was just pretty much okay. But this daughter, she got into the community college, but it was so boring because the level was so low and the teaching was so slow, and she couldn't get her driver's license because she didn't have a learner's permit for a year because she wasn't 18 yet. Like there was just all these loopholes, catch-22s that nothing worked. And I was living off my savings. And when I went to cash the last of my money to change my yen into dollars, my last bit of savings, I just went to a parking lot and I just cried. I was just in utter despair. What am I going to do? How am I going to get these kids into school? It's not working here. I couldn't get a job because I had no credit history. I had no contacts. I had no college education. I had nothing. I was like a nobody. And people looked down on me for being poor. I felt so much like stigma. It was mind blowing to me. And I just couldn't even, if I had gotten a minimum wage job, I might have been able to do that, but that wouldn't have paid the rent. So, what? So anyway, I went through all my savings. And meanwhile, my husband was back in Japan, and he had, I don't know, I can't say it was his fault, but we had 2/3 of our students quit. So from our school. So he wasn't making enough money to survive. I wasn't making enough money to survive. So I'm like, okay, I'm coming back to Japan. So after 10 months in the U.S., which was utter failure, like the lowest part of my life, I sold anything I had and moved back to Japan. And then we just were in panic mode to get money again because we weren't making enough to live. And so then that's when my husband moved away to another city to get a job. And I've been on my own ever since. So, but that's what happened 15 years ago.
But now you're in Japan now.
I'm still in Japan.
You've written a book.
I've written a book.
I have recovered. You're sitting in a beautiful room with indoor plants and a bookshelf full of books. And I've seen your son walking around. There's a Christmas tree, and we're talking, on a computer with webcams and the internet and everything. So yeah, you've got like a setup around you and a place for you. So how, from that absolute rock bottom where it feels like there's absolutely no way out of it, no way to recover,
now we need to know how you have managed to get to where you are. For anybody else that may be in that rock bottom place and looking for some inspiration on getting to where you are now, even though I'm sure every day is still a recovery, and every day is still, probably feelings of guilt towards your children, towards the situation that you're involved in, guilt towards yourself, grief for lost parents and family members and relationships and your childhood and the things that you missed out on and all of those things that come with trauma and rebuilding and changing your course. For anybody listening that needs that advice, what would you tell them?
Well, I mean, I would advise the therapy, but that wasn't an option for me. So, just study. You got to rewire your brain from all those years I had in the cult of reading cult publications every day. I had to change my brain from that and put new information in there and get new thought patterns and new intuitions. All my reactions were wrong. I had learned wrong reactions. I had to relearn how to react to things. And it takes a lot of effort, but it's so worth it. But reading and learning is really the key. And what not to do is to deny, is to say, oh, everything was fine. Oh, God looks at my heart. And so God knows that I was trying my best and all things work together for good to those that love God, right? The Bible says that. Well, that may be true and all, but you've got to, the unexamined life is not worth living. So it's really worth it to look at your life and where you are and assess where you learn from your mistakes. Our past is for education. It's not really for food for remorse. It's just to learn from. So I wanted to learn what I could from those years. And so that's what I spent my years just studying, to try to understand myself and understand why I made those decisions and to be able to come to a peace with myself about it and kind of forgive my younger self and understand that my younger self was just human like everybody else. And everybody makes mistakes, like the Dalai Lama says, when you're in a situation and it's hard, well, just expand it and know that like you're just one of the human race and everybody has these same feelings and these same inadequacies and these same weaknesses, It's not just me, there are other people. Anyway, the Dalai Lama has some quite good words of wisdom. He's a smart man. It's a neurologist too. Very smart. And well, reading is really the key. And study.
Read and study what you can, educate yourself, forgive yourself, and understand that everybody has these thoughts, feelings, regrets, and access therapy if you can, if it's available to you, if it's something that is, within your financial capabilities, if it's something that is accessible to you in the part of the world that you live in. And I guess that you've probably found some catharsis in writing about your experience in your memoir. Would you recommend sort of having a creative outlet for people in terms of, maybe talking on a podcast or writing a book, or you've got a blog as well? And so is there anything that you would say around talking about your experiences?
Well, I suppose that would kind of go in with therapy, huh? Talking about people's experiences. Absolutely. I think it would be good if people could have therapists and someone to talk to that's a professional listener.
Yep.
Who can guide and help. That would really be good. But because I didn't have that, I turned to study and writing myself. I know that when I was first out, and I think there's almost stages of grief you go through after you leave. Like my faith in the children of God, my faith was enmeshed in my psyche. So this was kind of torn apart out of me. And it's like something I kind of have to grieve for. So at first I was really guilty, feeling guilty. And then I was really angry. And so I had no one to tell my anger to. So I got a notebook and I just started writing all my anger in this notebook to get it all out, all the things I was angry about, all the ways I felt used and taken advantage of, and just on, just to get it all out. And then, then I could move on to the next stage, But yeah, that was really helpful to get all that anger out. But now I can look back on it, and I have a bit of understanding. And once I finished that, I finished my book and I kind of forgave myself. And okay, I know my younger self was just this naive girl that got mixed up in this terrible group. I was still a mother. I tried to do my best, but yeah, it wasn't the greatest. But okay, everybody seems to be doing okay in their adulthood. So, And then I changed my focus, and now I started studying other things, and completely different. And so I think changing my focus was also important, because if you study one thing for a long time and you change your focus, it completely renews your brain. Like, it makes it like your brain all alive again in different ways, changing my focus of study was, I think, also really good. And plus it helped me to move on. So I'm not like always dwelling on the cult life thing, because there's more to me than my past. I've got a future that there's so many things I want to do in this world before I die. I mean, I've already outlived my mom, my dad, my brother, and my sister. So I mean, my life, I realize my own mortality. I may not live that much longer, judging by my immediate family. So there's things I want to do. I want to write another book. I want to there's other things I really, really want to do. So I don't really have time to dwell on the past anymore. I just have to move forward to the things I want to accomplish.
I think that is profound advice for people who are maybe looking at what they do next, making plans and realizing that the experience that they've had doesn't define their life. It's part of their life. It will make up part of who they are now. It will influence, decisions that they make in the future and decisions they've made in the past. But it doesn't have to be everything you are. We often say that on the show, when people who have disabilities don't want to be defined by that disability. It's almost the same that you experiencing cult-like tactics and being involved in high demand groups doesn't mean that that's all that you are. Just that experience doesn't define you entirely. And your book, Abnormal Normal, is an example of part of your life, but you're not your entire life. It's not an autobiography of your existence from birth up until now. It's a part of your life. It's a very big part of your life, and probably, as I just said before, influences decisions that you make and decisions that you'll go on to make, but it's not everything that you are, and you're making plans outside of that, and you're learning things outside of that, and you've turned your attention to things other than that experience. And I think that's so great for anybody that is stuck wondering what they do next, where they go next, where they put their energy, and to redirect that focus is so great. And I really feel so lucky to have been given the opportunity to read your book and take away from it. Well, it like I said, I feel like it's an educational tool, and it's very important in the space of understanding cults and cult-like activity, but also in understanding the very systematic ways in which somebody is molded into somebody else's shape, and I feel like it's so prevalent, and I really want to highlight that to people in the hopes that they will go out and read it, to learn more, to educate themselves, and to also understand why some things happened the way that they did in the movement itself, which still exists today. It's just been renamed the Family International, so it's still ongoing today. Whether the same things are still happening within the movement, it's hard to say. But just to kind of finish our chat today, could you let everybody know where they can find your book, which was published in March 2020? So it is available for people to go out and read today. We will be featuring it as the memoir on the monthly memoir giveaway for the month of February. But where can people find you, Mary? Where can they find your blog and some of your other online writings, and specifically your book?
Okay, well, the book is on Amazon, Abnormal Normal, My Life and the Children of God. And it's available as a Kindle book and a paperback. And I write, my blog is not so active now, but I wrote on actively for 6 years. It's called Coming to Grips with My 30 Years in a Cult. And that's, you just Google that and you'll find it. Or I write on medium.com now, Mary Mahoney. So my most recent stuff is on medium.com.
So I will link all three of those things in the episode description for anybody that wants to go on and read any of Mary's work. I really do highly recommend it. Obviously, if you want to read a memoir for entertainment purposes, people love to read. People love to read people's stories, understand people's stories. But also, if you want to read something cult-related for an educational standpoint, again, I think that this book serves both of those purposes. So for anybody looking for the next book, this one is just highly recommended. And thank you so much, Mary, for giving me the opportunity to read the book and for sitting and talking with me for 4 hours. It must be late where you are now, so I do appreciate that as well. And just keep us up to date with anything you go on to do. You're hoping to write a second book. Keep in touch with us and let us know what you decide and any plans you put into place.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for your time, Mary. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.